Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Self-Validation Friday. Self-Validation Friday, you guys. And I'm excited about today's session because we're talking about the loudest voice in your head. So I'm gonna ask you, right? What's the loudest voice in your head right now, right? Listen, real question. Is the voice in your head reflecting your values or is it reflecting your fears, right? This week we've been talking about living from what truly matters, what truly matters. But here's the truth. Here's the truth. If your self talk still sounds like shame, if it sounds like guilt or perfectionism, you're not living by priorities, you guys. You're living by programs. Okay. You're living from an old program. All right. All right. Listen, all week we have been discussing the P in plan. And the P in plan is all around the series of seizing control of your life choices. And we do that by having a plan, you guys. And it really is important that we understand one, what our values are, and that we start to prioritize our values. Okay. Right now we're living from someone else's values. All right. So I'm excited about this conversation because I think that it's going to tie like this whole week together. All right. It's going to tie this whole week together. So here's the topic. Who are you when? Who are you when you honor your real priorities? Who are you when you honor your real priorities? Listen, stop obeying the critic and really start trusting the voice aligned with your truth. All right. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who can rewrite it. You are the one who can rewrite it, you guys. So here's my why. Because I've watched brilliant, powerful, called people silence themselves with inner dialogue that was never theirs to begin with, right? That was never theirs to begin with. So I created this session to really help you stop abandoning yourself through self-talk that was shaped by shame, performance, and fear, right? You deserve to speak to yourself with the same truth, with the same clarity, and the same grace you give to other people, right? That you give to your children, that you give to the elderly, right? Right? You deserve to speak to yourself with with that same tone and that same cadence. All right. So here's the disclaimer. This session is designed to really help you identify and understand the inner critic. But we know that the real transformation happens when you take intentional action. Healing doesn't come from silencing the inner critic, right? I say this every week. Healing doesn't come from silencing the inner critic. It comes from rewriting that script, okay? Rewriting the script in your head. So this session really invites you to do the inner work and speak to yourself in a voice that reflects your values, not your wounds. That reflect your values, not your wounds, you guys. Here's the thing. The reason I say that healing doesn't come from silencing the inner critic is because I do think that there's a belief, right, that this voice in my head is supposed to stop, right? I want it to stop, and it's not, right? You have to learn how to manage and respond to that voice and have a conversation with that voice from compassion and grace and understanding why it's there. All right, all right. So good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Self Validation Friday. I love Self Validation Friday because it wraps up like the whole week's conversation. So I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Sheila Little. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Sheila Little, right? Clinical therapist for 20 years and the founder of Shaping Solutions and the creator of Project Life. All right. So Life Lessons is an initiative through Project Life, and Project Life is where we turn theory into practice. So let's take our deep breath. All right. No pressure, just your presence, right? Just your presence, right? We've done what we're supposed to do with our person, right? We did our gratitude. We've, spoke to ourselves good. We've done everything for our person, and now we're coming together as a community to really get what the bite-sized recipes that will take us through the remainder of the day and over the weekend. All right. All right. So let's feel our feet on the floor, just getting present in our bodies and taking a deep breath. Okay. Legs. Okay. Your thighs. Your butts in the seat. If you're laying down, Just wiggle your toes, right? Just want to get present up your back, your stomach, all your organs, just becoming aware, okay? Your arms, right? Your hands, your neck, right? Okay? Your face, your lips, your nose, your eyes, okay? And then the space around you, right? The space around you. So let's take a deep breath. Breathing in our highest values, right? And breathing out the values that no longer belong to us. Okay, let's do that one more time. Just breathing in the values, our highest values, right? And breathing out the ones that no longer serve us. Okay, listen, drop a word in the chat. Drop a word in the chat that describes how you're feeling right now. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling excited. As most of I'm going to party this weekend and have a great time in LA. So I'm excited about that. Just being able to connect with individuals that I love and be able to do it big. So I'm excited. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? Okay, listen, this isn't a place to be perfect. Okay, life lessons in these sessions are not a place to be perfect. It's truly a place where we can be honest. All right, so you don't have to clean up your self talk today. All right, so I don't want you to walk away judging yourself because you don't have to clean it up today. You just have to become aware of it without judgment. Okay, you just have to become aware of it without judgment. Okay, so who is this session for? This session is for you if you struggle with imposter syndrome and constant self-doubt, right? If you second guess your needs, your boundaries, and your choices, if you feel confident publicly, but you question yourself privately, all right? This is for you if you're ready to stop living by the voice that shames you and start living by the truth that anchors you, you guys. Listen, all week we've examined the stories, the triggers, the obstacles, and the patterns. But today we get to ask, what voice is narrating all of that, right? We get to really ask and discover what voice is really narrating all of that. Because even if your circumstances change, guess what? If your inner talk stays the same, your freedom will still feel fragile. All right. So stories is what we believe, right? The triggers is what activate us, right? Our obstacles is what blocks us. The patterns is what we repeat. And then the inner talk, you guys, or this inner critic is what we say to ourselves when no one else is watching, right? And that is so powerful because that is the programming. Either we're validating or downloading or reinforcing an old program, right? Or we're enforcing what? Our new program. Okay. So through this week, hopefully you've been thinking about your values and reinforcing those, right? Because practice makes better, right? And so we do that over and over and over again. All right. So here's our powerful quote, powerful quote for today. All right. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one that gets to rewrite it. That is the quote. Okay. You are not the voice in your head, you guys. You are the one that gets to rewrite it. All right. So remember Jasmine. That's the person I chose this week to talk about. After spending a week identifying her values, the triggers and the patterns, right? She finally hit that wall. You know, it wasn't her circumstances. She realized, right? It was her inner critic, you guys. She wanted a rest. She wanted to rest, but her mind said, "You're being lazy," right? So, mind you, Jasmine has been doing work. She started to prioritize her values, right? She's been standing up for herself, right? She's overcome her obstacles. She's identified her patterns, right? Rescheduling her time, right? And now she has to face one of the biggest obstacles that we all do, you know. And I love working with clients like this because it is a progression, right? It's not that I'm looking for it, but I am looking. It's not that I'm looking for this to happen, but I kind of know it's going to happen, right? And so there's this. I want that transparency to happen so we can be gentle with ourselves, right? So she went to rest and her mind said, "You're being lazy. You're being lazy." And she wanted to say no. She wanted to say no, but her mind said, "You're being too difficult," right? "You're being too difficult." She realized it wasn't the world that was holding her back. It was her own critic echoing old programming, right? So when Jasmine started using her voice to speak to herself with the same truth that she gave to others, right? Her confidence didn't grow, you guys, it stabilized. Right. So self-validation really gave her back her peace. Right. So with her, we're learning how to really stand up for ourselves. You hear me say sitting in a lot. That's my word, right? We're teaching her how to sit in it, right? To really allow this voice to be present without her judging it because it comes with the transformation, okay? And so, it gets difficult and it gets tough, but I'm encouraging her that you can do this. You can do this. And I want you guys to know that you can do it too. You can do it too. All right. So here's our heart check in. I want you to pause and I want you to think, what have you been saying to yourself this week that doesn't reflect your real priorities, right? Or your real worth? All right. No judgment, but just what have you been saying to yourself throughout this week? I know that you guys have been with me now. We're going into the third series. So I know that some of you have been shifting and changing. I've talked to some of you guys who have been, implementing, right? I know in the labs we talk about this, right? What but what are you saying to yourself this week that doesn't reflect your real priorities, right? Or your real worth? Think about that as we're having this session today. All right. Because here's the thing, the voice in your head shapes your identity. If it's not rooted in your values, right, it will pull you into patterns that keep you out of alignment. All right. You can't build a life of clarity and peace while carrying self talk rooted in fear, perfectionism, and performance. All right. Self validation isn't arrogance, you guys. It's alignment. It's how you sustain growth without needing applause to stay grounded. Right. I know it feels good to be applauded for people to see us. But listen, self validation isn't arrogance, it's alignment. Okay. And it's how you sustain growth without needing applause to stay grounded. All right. You want to feel like you really want to feel like you belong to yourself. You want your decisions to reflect who you really are, not who you're trying to prove you are, right? That level of self trust becomes your spiritual home. It becomes your spiritual home, right? When you feel like you belong to yourself, right? When you make decisions that reflect who you are, not who you're trying to be, that alignment itself, that self trust becomes a spiritual home, a divine place, right? That becomes peaceful, right? And we can sit in that, right? Even in the uncomfortable, even in the uncomfortableness, even in at times where it's difficult, we know in our guts that we made the right decision, right? And that we're on the right path. Listen, a client once told me, I didn't realize that my inner critic was just the voice of everyone I've tried to please. But once I made peace with myself, I stopped performing for people who never saw me anyway. I thought that was powerful. I thought that was powerful, right? She said I didn't even realize that the inner critic was just the voice of I ever tried to pick everyone else that I ever tried to please, right? And once I made peace with myself, I stopped performing for people who never saw me anyway. Think about that. Think about that. All right. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and self affirmations, right? Uh, Self affirmation research shows that consistent, conscious self talk rewires neural patterns, boosts resilience, and builds sustainable emotional health, you guys. Right? You don't need a better life plan. You need a better inner voice. All right. That is what you want, isn't it? That is what you want. You want a better voice within yourself, right? A cheerleader, a guiding voice that's encouraging you. And that is done with practice, you guys. That is done with practice. So let's get to the framework. All right. Drop a heart in the chat if you like that. All right. That is done with practice. All right. So here's the framework. This is the IT, the inner talk, right? So this is what we focus on Fridays. All week we walk through the stories, the triggers, the obstacles, and the patterns. But this is the voice that ties them all together. Even with values, if your inner critic sounds loud, your peace will always feel fragile. Even with values, you guys, if your inner critic sounds loud, your peace will always feel fragile. So rewrite the voice and reclaim your power, you guys. So what you need to know about your inner critic and values, okay? We're not just dealing with negative self-talk. We're really dealing with the voice that shaped the stories of that shaped our survival and that really stolen our priorities, okay? So let's break it down. All right. So one, the inner critic is not true. It's programming. All right. The inner critic is not true. It's programming. That voice in your head that says you're not enough, that wasn't born in you. It was built around you. Okay. It wasn't born in you. You wasn't born with that message, right? It was given to you. It was built around you. The inner critic is usually a collection of what your family praised or punished, right? What society told you was acceptable and what trauma trained you to believe you had to be. All right. So when it shows up, it's not revealing your reality. It's replaying your conditions, you guys. It's replaying your conditions. All right. Number two, your inner critic will always protect your priorities, even if those priorities are misaligned. Okay. So your inner critic will always protect your priorities, even if those priorities are misaligned. All right. So if your inner critic is still telling you to hustle, to shrink, to overfunction, to overperform, or to stay small, it's because somewhere inside you still believe that your values come from those patterns. All right. Somewhere inside you, you still believe that your values are attached to those patterns. And until you update your internal priorities, right, your inner critic will fight to keep you safe in the old system. Right. Remember, the inner critic is that old program trying to keep you safe. And I know it's just like, why? Why do I gotta go through all this? It's a beautiful thing. I think if we know better, we do better, you know. And when we know better, I think we would have been trained better, right? So if I think if our parents knew that, or if you're a parent and you know this, right, then I want you to be mindful with your words because you're programming your children, right? And how they will think as adults. And so that they won't have to go through a reprogramming when they become adults, right? And so it's a beautiful mechanism when it's working for you, but the work is that our program just isn't working for us, and it wasn't by chance. It wasn't by chance. It was by design, right? Years and years and years of design to get you to believe something about yourself that wasn't true, that was passed down generation and generation and generation. And now we're living a consequence of that. And it's happening to us so subtly, and I'm saying subtle, but it's still powerful because it's the inner critic. It's the words in our head. It's the conversations that we're having with ourselves when nobody's listening. All right. When nobody's listening. All right. So I know that it seems like, well, why do I got to go through all that? But it is an old system and we have to update that. Right. And so that's why this week we're talking about prioritizing your values, because now that I know my values, I can start creating goals around those values. Now I can start creating language around the goals that I want. And then I can start speaking in an affirmed way. And all of that is intentional, right? Intentional, so that I can start experiencing and attracting and manifesting and expecting the life that I want, right? Right. And I think that that's the power of it, because every one of you that's listening to me has the ability to do that, no matter what your circumstances were. In mental health, now I'm talking about mental illness. If you have a healthy, a sustainable mental health, right? You can retrain your mind. And even people who have mental illness, right? They have abilities that they can live beyond that mental illness. All right. All right. But in mental health, it is so important for us to start to really uh, reprogram this old system that we have been that is really guiding us unconsciously, and we don't even know, right? And that's the true frustration. All right, so number 3, self-validation. If you like that, put a heart in the chat for me. All right, self-validation begins when you choose your real values over your inherited ones. All right, when you start to really choose your real values over your inherited ones, listen, you're likely still living by your mother's expectations, right? Your father's absence or his expectations, right? Your grandparents' expectations if you live with them, your friends' expectation if your friends were big role models in your life, your partner's preferences, right? Your job's definition of work, right? Your faith, the faith-based community that you grew up in, how they view success, right? You're likely to still be living by these value systems, right? You caught these over time. You hear it, right? We see it on social media, and it silently uh, but soundly start to shape, right, how we see ourselves and move how we do things. And again, our language is from should, right? And this is how we know we're in duty, because we're thinking about what I should be doing versus what I want to be doing, right? I should be doing this. I should be doing this. That is a very much duty paradigm language, right? What should I do? Because you're looking for what, an answer for somebody else to tell you what to do, when you can empower yourself and really do the thing that you want to do, that aligns with your values. And that's what I'm saying. If you don't know what your value is, it's okay. But how about we explore? How about we explore that? Okay. All right. Listen, the inner critic is loud anytime you start living differently, right? Anytime you start stepping out your mom's expectations, your grandparents' expectations, your partner's preferences, right? Your job's definition or the world's definition of worth and success, right? The faith-based community of what a woman should be, what a man should be, what a wife is, what a husband. Whenever you start to step outside those guidelines, guess what? The inner critic gets louder, right? So the moment you start prioritizing your own truth, right, the inner critic will panic, because it was never built to protect your freedom. It was built to protect what your familiarity, what you're familiar with, right? It was built to protect what you're familiar with. All right. So the inner critic was never created to protect your freedom. It was created to protect what you were familiar with. All right. All right. If that makes sense, put a 1 in chat for me. Okay. All right. Listen, number 4, you can't build a new life with an old voice. You cannot build a new life with an old voice, you guys. Listen, if your self-talk is still rooted in fear, performance, and perfectionism, or shame, or guilt, right? Your growth will always feel fragile. Okay. Until you learn how to validate yourself, your healing will be conditional, based on who claps for who, agrees with who, and who approves you. Let me say that again. Until you learn how to validate yourself, your healing will be conditional. It will be based on who claps for you, who agrees with you, and who approves you. All right. A lot of us are healing because we want our mates to feel like they picked a good person. right? A lot of us are doing the work because we want other people to applaud us, to clap for us, to agree with us, right? And that is a conditioned healing because when they don't notice it or their behaviors don't change, then you're like, well, what am I changing for? You're changing for you. You're changing because you're carrying the weight. You're changing because you're uncomfortable. You're changing because you feel the dis-ease, right? But a lot of us feel like our healing is conditional because if I do this, then they will do that, right? If I become a better woman, then he will, not lie, cheat, and steal. If I become a man, then she will start to respect da 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 da, right? No, this is not an if then. If I become a better person, then I will be aligned in my values and then I will start to attract. Every consequence of your healing comes back in boomerangs to a consequence for you, not for anyone else. All right? Because waiting for the claps and the for someone to agree with you and someone to approve you, that's exhausting. Okay? Self-validation is what sustains transformation, right? Right? This is who I am. This is what I need. This is what I believe. And I don't need applause to honor it. That is the statement that we sit in. Okay? This is who I am. This is what I need. This is what I believe. And I don't need an applause. I don't need applause to honor it. Okay? We want to start moving in that direction. And not that this is who I am, so I can't change. Because we know with healing, this is who I am is evolution. So we know it's seasonal, right? It's it's progressing, it's growing, it's a becoming. So my am is what it is now, but it can change and I can give myself autonomy to do that. Okay? And the am is a part of the whole, right? This is who I am, meaning I'm a person that's healing. I'm a person that's growing. I'm a person that's evolving, right? It's not this is who I am and I'm just an angry person. It's not singular. It's very plural in the who I am. Okay, and it's from an abundant place, not a scarcity place. And I want you to understand the difference between this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I believe, and I don't need applause to honor that. From a healthy place, that is an abundance, right? That's not from scarcity. This is who I am, so I can't change. Okay, all right. Number 5, the inner critic is not your enemy, you guys. It is your sacred, your scared inner, it is your scared inner witness, right? It is your scared inner witness. It's the voice that says you can't do that. It's the voice that said you'll lose them if you say that, right? It's the voice that said, who do you think you are? Okay, right? It is the scared inner witness, right? That's fearful, right? Right? It is not there to destroy you, though. It is trying to protect your current identity, right? That was built in that it is there. It is trying to protect the identity you built in order to be accepted, and you built this identity consciously or unconsciously. All right, but the inner critic is there to protect that, right? So your job isn't to be silent; it's to speak. It is to speak it differently. All right. Your job is not to silence it. I'm sorry, your job isn't to silence it, it's to speak to it differently, right? Thank you for trying to protect me, but I don't live there anymore. That's how we respond. Thank you. I appreciate that, but I don't live there anymore, right? And we can say it just as gentle, okay? All right. All right, listen, your self talk is either a loop of your old stories or the language of your freedom. And today we get to choose the voice that matches your values. All right, all right. Another one is you've been claiming is discernment. You've been claiming is discernment, but it's really your inner critic dressed in spiritual language. How does this look? Okay. Let me say it again. You have been claiming that it's discernment, but it's really your inner critic dressed up in spiritual language. All right. This is big for faith forward people and high functioning leaders, right? The inner critic is sneaky and it sounds like God is telling me to wait. God is telling me to wait when it's really fear of failure, right? You have a fear of failing, right? Another one is I just want to be wise. I just want to be wise, but it's really perfectionism. So you're trying to do it perfect, but you're saying I want to be wise. Another one is I don't want to seem prideful. I don't want to seem prideful and boastful and arrogant, right? But it's really self rejection, all right? It's really self rejection. You can't validate your spirit while obeying your fear, okay? You can't validate your spirit or the divine part of you while obeying your fear. This is not discernment, you guys. This is doubt in disguise, okay? This is doubt in disguise. Listen, your loud another one is your loudest voice in your life, right? The loudest voice in your life should not be the one that doubts you. All right. This is how we know that it's in disguise because the loudest voice in your life shouldn't be the one that doubts you. If the voice in your head sounds like a critic, sounds more like a critic than a coach, more than likely it's a wound. It's not wisdom, right? And it's time to shift that. If the voice in your head sounds more like a critic than it sounds like a coach or a friend, then more than likely that's a wound speaking and that's not wisdom, right? And it's time to shift that because the inner critic isn't just exhausting, right? It's misleading, right? It's not just I'm tired of hearing his voice. It's not just energy draining, right? It's misleading, right? And you can't discern well, lead well, and live well if your self talk is rooted in rejection instead of reverence. All right. Right. And listen, you have the right to choose how you talk to yourself, no matter who taught you otherwise. All right. So here's the thing. Some of you guys heard the voice from your mothers, from your pastors, from your ex, from your younger siblings, from your scared self, right? And assume that this is just who I am because of all of those voices that you heard. And I want to say no, that's how you were shaped. Okay. That's how you were shaped. Now you get to rewrite your script, right? Now you get to really rewrite your inner world, right? Just because someone spoke fear into you doesn't mean you have to keep echoing it. Just because someone spoke fear into you doesn't mean that you have to keep echoing it. Okay. And then there's a spiritual reframe. God doesn't speak to you in shame. So why do you? All right. God doesn't speak to you in shame, so why do you? One of the deepest lies that the inner critic repeats is that God is disappointed in you, right? This is one of the biggest lies that the inner critic repeats to a lot of individuals that God is disappointed in you. God's conviction, it will challenge you guys, but it will also speak to your identity, not your inadequacies. It will speak to your identity, not your inadequacies. All right. So if the voice in your head tears you down, that's not the Holy Spirit, right? That's the echo of something that hurt you, right? And you've outgrown it, right? You have outgrown that thing that hurt you. All right. So you can rewrite it. You can rewrite the person that you are now. All right. Self validation is not arrogance, it's alignment, you guys. Okay. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And I know that you may still be wrestling with guilt around trusting your own voice. All right. But I need you to know that self validation isn't saying I know everything. It's just saying I know what's true for me right in this moment. And I don't need to perform for proof anymore. I know it's true for me right now, and I don't need to perform for proof anymore. All right. Right. I know that this is a wrestle listening to me talk about this inner critic because you're living with yours. And I don't know how loud yours is or how deep yours go, but I do want to encourage you that those are somebody else's voices. And I promise you, if you uh, next next month, and I'm probably even do it this month. I'm gonna do this series, this stopping now series where I'm gonna be doing like some stopping now coaching. And I guarantee if you come to one of those mini sessions with me, we'll discuss this, right? Because it is a wrestle, right, between guilt and trusting your own voice, especially when you've been with this voice. Like a lot of my clients are 60, 65, in their 50s, right? And then I have clients that's in their 20s and 30s. And I want to let you guys know that it really is not the length of time, right? We all have it. We all have this inner critic because it shaped who we were when we were younger. And then experience after experience after experience just validated. It just made the experiences that we had appear even more real. All right. So self-validation again isn't saying I know everything, and I don't want to come off, and I don't want you to think that, right? But it is validating that I know what's true for me, right? I know what's true for me, and I want you guys to trust that. And we trust so many other things and willing to be lied to. We're willing to be misled by other people. We're willing to, trust our vehicles and machines and everything else. But we're not willing to give that same trust to ourselves, even if I'm wrong. Even if I'm wrong, right? So I'm saying I know what's true for me. And today, right? And say tomorrow I do that thing. And in the action I took tomorrow, I realized that, oh, maybe that wasn't for me, right? What I said today was true for me today. I needed to say what I said today to have the experience that I said that I would have tomorrow to bring me to the conclusion that I would have to make my next what truth about me. Oh, yeah, I definitely know that's not for me. And I can stand in both of those with equal integrity, right? And trust myself, not judge myself like, oh, I must have been stupid or crazy. I thought this was for me, but it really wasn't. No, because I didn't have that experience. Only thing I had when I said I knew what was for me was all the experiences that brought me to that moment. I got to a new moment. It revealed a new situation for me. And I gave myself permission to use now all my information and make a different decision or stand on the decision I made. Right. And this is the freedom. And I don't have to abandon myself in that. And I don't have to judge myself in that. It's called discovery. And that is what life is about. It's interesting to me. I think about this word dating, and we don't date. We need to date because even the word date, DAT, right? Data starts with what? DAT. It's data. Dating is collecting data. And it's collecting data about who? Not the people. It's collecting data about me. Because each time I sit in front of a different person, and I'm speaking to people who are not in relationship, but even if you date the mate that you're with, start back dating them, right? Go to different places, right? Go see different movies, go to different venues, right? Go outside of your comfort zone. Why? So you can collect different data about you, right? So you can create different experiences about you. Okay. So again, self-validation is not saying I know everything. It's just saying I know what's true for me and I don't need to perform. I don't need to perform for proof anymore. Okay. Right. This kind of self-trust is how you sustain value-based living. All right. It's how you stop living by reaction and start really living through revelation. Through revelation. Okay. The voice in your head is a the narrator of your life. It's time to really rewrite that script and start speaking and speak like someone you believe in. All right. and start speaking like someone you believe in. Okay. So who are you, right? Who are you when you honor your priorities? All right. Who are you when you honor your priorities? All right. Listen, you won't know who you are until you stop living by who you had to be. You won't know who you are until you stop living by who you had to be. Okay. If your whole identity has been built around being the strong one, the helper, the fixer, the overachiever, right? Then honoring your real priorities might feel like you're losing yourself, right? Like you're losing a part of yourself. When we talked about that grief, right? When you're actually finally meeting yourself, all right, when you're actually finally meeting yourself. So this like lesson is really giving you permission to grieve, right? To grieve these old roles and create a space to really reclaim the truth underneath them, right? The truth underneath these roles that you have been given, that you have been conditioned to sit in, right? All right. Number two, uh your real priorities will challenge your performance-based identity. All right. And when I'm saying performance based identity, I am saying, and I want you to hear this with soft ears, who you doing it for? Right? Who you doing that for? Who you trying to prove? Why are you doing that? When you asking, why am I doing all of this? Is it to make your friends think something? Is it to make your mama think something? Is it to make your kids think they got a good mama? Your husband think they got a good wife? The church think that you believe in God, right? Who is the individual that you're doing all of this stuff for? That's the performance. All right. If all of those questions don't lead back to me, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because this is what I value. I'm doing it because this is how I was designed. This is who I feel like I was called to be, right? Because that is the alignment. And a lot of us are not living in alignment. We are performing, right? And we're doing it unconsciously, right? And we're doing it so sophisticatedly, right? We feel like we need to or we should be doing this, right? But we tired and we exhausted. All right. So your priorities will challenge your performance-based identities. Your real priorities will, right? So when someone says I value rest, when they say I value rest, right? But they were taught hustle and holiness. When they say I value truth, but they learn silence and survival. And when they say I value creativity, but they grew up with shame around self-expression, then honoring their real priorities will feel unsafe. It will feel like rebellion. It will even feel selfish, right? But when your priorities shift, your patterns will panic. All right. Listen, when your priorities start to shift and you start to go into value based priorities, value based living, right? Your patterns will panic. But that doesn't mean you're wrong, right? It means you're realigning. And that's why you need the community and support to really support you in that. So you can talk about that, right? All right. Listen, the inner critic is the loudest when you stop living for approval. Why? Because it was trained to keep you acceptable. It was trained to keep you acceptable. And the minute you start doing what matters to you, the inner voice will say, you're being selfish. You'll lose people. They don't think you crazy, right? Who do you think you are? Right. So this voice in your head is really trying to keep you again in the identity that made you feel safe. But freedom isn't safe, you guys. But freedom isn't safe to your old self. It's but freedom isn't safe to your old self. Okay. Because freedom isn't safe to your old self. Okay. All right. Freedom is sacred. Okay. Freedom is sacred. And listen, when you honor your real priorities, your peace becomes your proof. When you start to really honor your real priorities, guess what? Your peace becomes your proof. All right. When you start saying yes to your truth, you start to feel lighter. When you start to say no from alignment, you feel powerful. Right. When you start to speak in clarity, you feel present. And when you validate yourself, you start to feel whole. Listen, peace isn't a reward for peace isn't a reward from pleasing others. It's a signal that you're pleasing yourself, your soul, right? The aspect of you. Okay? This aspect of you. Again, and God isn't impressed by your performance. He's invested in your alignment. Listen, God isn't calling you to be useful. He's calling you to be whole. He's not clapping for your burnout. He's guiding you back to the voice he placed in you before the world made you forget that, right? So many high performing, high achieving, high performing people really believe that their inner critic is their motivator, right? Is their motivator. When you ask them to silence it, or when I'm saying silence that, that feels unsafe, right? Because a lot of us, even, we see it. Like I gotta tell myself, do this or whatever, because that's gonna get me riled up, right. So when we go to manage that inner critic, it can seem unsafe, right? Because if I stop criticizing myself, then I may stop growing, I may stop moving, I may stop doing the things that I was going to do, because that's the voice that really pushes me. Listen, self-compassion doesn't weaken your growth, you guys, right? It's what sustains it. In that voice, using that coach is pretty much, you probably is an up and down, a yo-yoer, right? And so that voice comes in and you're using it to push you, and then you drop, and then now this voice got to come back in and push you, and then you drop. See, self-compassion won't do that. Self-compassion is more sustained, right? And it's sustaining what your emotions, and it's making you more emotional, giving you more emotional resilience. So now you have the energy to sustain the things that you want to do. Okay. Listen, you don't have to be hard on yourself to become your highest self, right? Your inner critic you don't have to be hard to stay your highest self. Okay. I want you to know this as I wrap up this session. Your inner critic was created through repetition. Your inner critic was created through repetition. Your inner coach will be created the same way, right? You can't just recognize the voice. You have to rehearse a new one. You have to rehearse a new one, right? Self-validation is a skill. It's not a feeling. It is a skill. It's not a feeling. All right. So you won't feel empowered overnight, but you can practice the voice of truth until it becomes your new normal. Until it becomes your new normal. So I have created a 5-minute inner voice rewiring tool. If you want that tool, drop me in the chat. Drop me in the chat. If you want that tool, drop me in the chat. Okay. All right. Now let's get to our biblical wisdom. All right. And then if you will have the workbooks, you guys, you already have it. You already have the tool is in the workbook. So you should see that too. Okay. All right. Biblical wisdom. Okay. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Now we've been on this verse before. Okay. What this means, this isn't about how we speak to others. It's about how we speak to ourselves. All right. Your words, even the ones you say out loud, they carry energy. They give direction. They're a frequency. They're a fruit, you guys. So when you speak fear, you harvest anxiety. When you speak shame, you harvest insecurity. When you speak truth, you harvest peace. And when you speak grace, you guys, you harvest healing. All right. If your inner voice isn't constantly, if your inner voice is constantly criticizing, rushing, or condemning you, you're planting the seeds of exhaustion, not empowerment. All right. So you will eat the fruit of whatever you've been feeding your soul, whatever you've been feeding your mind, whatever you've been feeding your heart with your words. You will eat the fruit of that. All right. Right. The spirit of God within. So this is a statement that you can say to yourself. The Spirit of God within you gave you the power to speak life over yourself daily, intentionally, and without apology, you guys. And if you can speak life to others, you surely can start speaking life to yourself, right? In the mirror. Okay. You surely can look at yourself and start speaking life to you in the mirror. All right. Listen, this verse isn't about casual language. It's about creative power, right? It's about creative power. I love Myron Golden, right? Because he says that the first thing God tells you about himself is that he was creative, right? That he was a creator. He goes and he talks about, like, when you introduce when people introduce themselves, they often introduce and they tell you who they are. And in the beginning, God created. That's what the Bible starts off. So it shows you that God is what, a creator. And then what did he do when he created man? He told us to what? Create. Right? So this verse isn't about casual language, it's about our creative power, right? We have creative power. It tells us words don't just describe reality, it shapes, right? They shape our reality, right? My company is called Shaping Solutions. Okay, shaping solutions, because solutions are shaped and they're shaped with so many things. But a big thing that I believe is updating people's language. And so I'm always listening for how people talk, right? And the patterns that they say. And I really want them to update their language, right? Because you're shaping your reality, right? I'm constantly updating my language. Like I told you, I came from Saginaw, Michigan, number one murder capital in the United States. I grew up in that neighborhood. So my language goes deep. Okay. It goes really deep. And so I have to be intentional about what I hear, what I'm putting into my head, because I mean, my inner critic could be the annihilator. Okay. The annihilator. Right. And so I have to be gentle, but I also need the language, right? The language to be able to be gentle and to be able to look at myself differently. And like I told you guys, I listen to affirmations every night, right? Before I go to sleep. So my reticular activation system can hear that, right? So it can hear that. Okay. So listen, this verse isn't about casual language. It's about creative power. All right. It tells us words doesn't just describe our reality, right? It shapes it. Um, right. So when your inner talk is rooted in shame, right, your life starts to feel like something you have to survive. When your inner critic is rooted in truth, though, your life begins to feel like something sacred and sustainable. All right. So in this session, we're not just talking about uh, how to think differently. We're not just talking about how to think differently, right? I'm inviting you to really speak differently, intentionally, right? And speaking differently, really, this whole week. If you if you haven't if you haven't made it one of your values, right, prioritizing your values, one of those should be how I talk to myself, right? Compassion, right? Compassion, because that's how because the inner narrative, because that's how we shift our inner narratives, right? That's how we shift our inner narrative, by really speaking differently with intention, right? And that's how peace grows. Peace is not given to us from other people. And I know we hear people say, I just need you to be my peace. I just need, no, that's not how that works, right? Peace is how you experience a situation. And how you experience a situation is what? How it's narrated in your head. And if you don't change how you experience the world, um, how you narrating things in your mind, then the most peaceful person can still bring uncomfortable and uncomfort and dis-ease, right? Because your narrator is seeing a problem. All right. All right. So we speak differently with intention, right? And that's how the inner narrative shift, and that's how peace grows. And really that's how you bear the fruits of alignment, you guys. That's how you bear the fruits of alignment, right? The power of your life isn't just in God's mouth, you guys, it's in your mouth too. It's in your mouth too. And when you align your voice with truth, right, you co-create your healing experience. And when you speak to yourself with grace, right, you speak with the voice of the God that's within you, of the divinity that's within you. All right. Our promise verse for today: no weapon formed against me shall prosper, right? And you will refute every tongue. Isaiah 54 and 17. I'm sorry, Isaiah 54 and 17. No weapon formed against me shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses me. All right. This is often read as a spiritual protection from outside enemies, right? We know that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I've introduced this verse before, but the most dangerous weapon, you guys, in your life isn't always on the outside of you. Sometimes it's the voice in your head, all right? It's the one that says you're not ready. It's the one that says you're too much. It's the one that says you'll fail again. It's the one that says you don't need any help. It's the one that says, who do you think you are for doing that? It's the one that says, quit, right? Right? Those thoughts are weapons. Those thoughts are weapons. And this voice said that they will not prosper. That is the promise, right? They will not prosper, right? You will refute every tongue that accuses you. This means that you have to speak back. You have to respond. You have to reclaim your voice and say, that is not who I am anymore. That is not my truth. That is not God. Okay, that is not God, and that is not my divine self, right? All right. God has given you the authority to silence every internal lie that tries to shrink you, uh, or shrink your purpose. Even every God has given you every authority to shrink every internal lie that tries to shrink your purpose, right? Even if that lie comes dressed in your own voice, even if that lie sounds like somebody that you trusted the most, even if that lie comes from somebody who loved you the most, right? God has given you the authority to silence it. All right. How this verse really ties into this session, when we name the inner critic as one of the most destructive weapons, right, we face, no, not a sword, not a sword, not a storm, but the constant voice of doubt, of shame, of guilt, of fear, right? Isaiah reminds us that no voice, no matter how loud, is not stronger than God's truth, right? Than your truth, than the divine truth within you, right? So you will refute every tongue, which means you not just you're not just being protected, you're being called to participate in your protection. You're being called to participate in your protection, you guys. This verse gives give you permission and responsibility to speak back. I'm not my mistakes. I'm not being too much. I'm not too broken to heal. Okay. This session really invites you to use your inner voice as a weapon of light. Okay. As a weapon of light to really challenge every accusation, even the ones wearing your own voice, even the ones that's wearing your own voice. So when you hear the inner critic rise, you don't have to crumble, right? Because God's power doesn't just defend you from others, right? It equips you to defend you from yourself, your new, current, present self from your old program, right? From your conditioned self, right? The truth of God doesn't just silence the enemies, you guys. It also silences your fears. All right. It also silences that inner critic. All right. All right. So these scriptures are not meant to inspire fear or awe in a distance, right? It's really a blueprint for emotional liberation. Okay. In the context of self-validation Friday, they're permission slips. They are permission slips to really speak life to yourself, to refute inner accusations, to really take spiritual authority over your self-talk, and to really practice patience, right? With your real priorities. You don't have to wait for someone else to validate your worth. You don't have to keep living under the voice of under the voice that once protected you but limits you now. Okay, the God in you, the divine being that's in you already has spoken the truth. Now your job is to echo that. All right. All right. Together these verses say, The war isn't just outside of you, it's internal, you guys. But your voice, anchored in truth, is your weapon of peace. All right. All right. You don't just need protection, right? You need power. You need the power. You need to step into it. Step into your power and authority. And these scriptures really remind you that the most sacred act is self-leadership. Is self-leadership and choosing a voice that really reflects your spirit, not your survival. Okay, so I want to ask you this: what would it sound like? What would it sound like if the voice inside of you spoke from the divine truth of who you are and not your fears? Okay. All right. If you like that, drop a two in the chat for me. If you like that biblicalism, drop a two in the chat. Okay. So here is our let's put this into practice. All right. So, hey, our action step again, if you want to put a me in the chat, use that 5-minute inner voice rewiring tool, right? It's providing a workbook for the people who are in the labs. If you want to just drop a me below, right? And practice rewriting the voice in real time. All right. I do have a journal prop for you. If you don't want that, you can just say, what would my self-talk sound like if I truly honored my values, right? And then the affirmation for today: I speak to myself with the same truth I use to empower others. I speak to myself with the same truth that I use to empower others. Our intention for today, I rewrite the voice in my head so it aligns with the truth in my heart, right? A part of this is getting back in connection with our heart. And then for the next 24 hours, track every time your inner critic shows up. Gently challenge, gently challenge it, gently challenge it. Then reframe it with your new voice, Okay. All right. And then you know that we have the call, the challenge, and the charge. All right. The call, the challenge, and the charge. So your call is, what truth are you walking away with today? Okay. The challenge: what old voice will you stop listening to today? All right. And then the challenge is always go shape your life. Right. And today you're going to go shape it with language that lifts, not limits. All right. If, if today's session resonated with you and you're walking with some insight and awareness. Okay. Right. Drop a fire in the chat. And let's celebrate our growth together, you guys. Let's celebrate our growth together. You already know, if this session woke something up in you, this is exactly the kind of insight we explore deeper. I want to say deeper in those weekly coaching labs, you guys. We don't just reflect, we help reshape. We don't reflect, we help reshape. All right. That growth membership really gives you the tools and the structure, because your growth deserves more than a moment. It deserves a container. Okay. And this month, you can join for the $47 a month at SheilaLittle.com/life, you guys. Listen, remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. If you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life, you guys. I love you. I love you. I love you. It's Self-Validation Friday. I hope you validate yourself for the rest of the weekend, you guys. I will see you on Monday. I'll see you on Monday when we start talking about lists. Next week, we're talking about lists. And I'm excited about next week's conversation. It's about lists, and we're talking about vision and goals, really designing the roadmap for your life. And we're using lists, but you already know I always have a spin to it. So I love you. I love you. I love you. I'll see you on Monday when we're talking about what have you believed about what's possible for your life. So I'll see you in that on Monday for that life lesson.